me as an investor going in and buy something like this, like my biggest questions would be around Port Dover.
Yeah.
However, like at this point, like I see the housing problem in Ontario, and if you don't need to be in a city, you'll leave for more flexibility and freedom and making your budget stretch further. Welcome back to REI Hot Seat. Andrew Hines here with Brad McCrae and David Hulshof, and we are doing yet another distance session. I'll be back in Ontario soon enough, but I appreciate you guys making the time and accommodation to pull another deal together for us.
Appreciate you having us. Then you're in where,
Of course.
Florida?
Yeah, Naples, Florida, enjoying incredible weather. It's been cloudy 2 times since we've been here, and that's for like 6 weeks.
I think it's been sunny since 2 times here since you've been gone. So
Yeah, the inverse.
the inverse.
Yeah, so it's hard to come back, but yeah, the weather's going to get nice at home soon, so I'll make it back. But tell me, guys, what are we talking about today?
So we've got it's an off-market 15-unit, purpose-built in Port Dover, close to a 6 cap at purchase, elderly demographic in the building with some tenants that have already submitted to go to senior old age homes, and direct-to-CMHC deal too. So it's beautiful. It's a good-looking deal.
Okay, so and we were talking off camera or before we started this on the demographic in Port Dover, which I think is the obvious place to start because I think a lot of people will not have been to Port Dover. I have been a few times. I know they do the motorcycle every Friday the 13th. There's the big motorcycle trip down there. And then, of course, beachgoers, like they actually put up palm trees on the beach down there in the summer. Like I've seen it a few times. It's pretty ridiculous. And it's got a decent vibe if you want to go down there in the summer. But other than that, general feedback I've gotten is that, yes, there are a lot of retirees down there. I think people enjoy retiring near the water. And that kind of adds up with what you've said there. And then, of course, lots of farming, and you mentioned fishing. So all those things make sense. But yeah, more of a rural surrounding than, the urban city that we typically live in.
Yeah, and I mean, the viewers don't know. What we do for these sheets is a filter to kind of comb down deals that we like enough to discuss with clients that it fits for. When it's something, secondary, tertiary market, some of the data is a little bit harder to pull. So for example, we're pretty confident at, 1,800 on a stabilized renovated 2-bed. But what we would do in the case like this is if we have a client that gets it under contract, we're going to canvass local property managers or local agents to get a better handle on the rental rates. Mm-hmm. And then do obviously a deeper dive into things like, vacancy. So we filled in, just for context, like a 2% vacancy, which is somewhat standard across the board in Ontario, 2.5. But I would suspect that on a deeper dive, we'd need to adjust that. We'll probably go up a little bit.
Yeah, I noticed you got some round numbers. We got 1,500 on the rents. So you're kind of putting in placeholders. And I mean, I think that seems reasonable. I imagine you probably can get your 1,500, especially with nicer places. You could probably get much more than that.
Yeah, and we take, again, all we're doing in these is aggregate data as much as we can get our hands on. Renovated, unrenovated, doesn't matter, as close to the area as possible. And then we just pull, what's the average 1-bed. But in something like a Port Dover, sometimes you might have to go from, in Kitchener, it's going to be a, half a kilometer radius to get as many data points as we need. Mm-hmm. In Port Dover, you're probably not going to get that. So we have to cast a bit of a wider net to get rents. And then what we do as we get it under contract is bring that back down to a finer point.
So would you look at, and I always wondered this, early on, because I never worked as a realtor or an appraiser, but I developed my own sense. And now I would think you look at comparable small towns too, if you need. Like if you can't find enough in your small town, look at other small towns that have similar characteristics to get an idea. Of course, you're never as certain as you want to be in those scenarios, but there is sort of a floor for housing, even if you look in, your favorite area up near Bruce Power and, other stuff like that. Like, even though you go out of the big towns, there's only so much discount that really happens on the rent rate. But Jake was saying on the last episode that there's much greater discount typically on the purchase of the building, which is where you kind of get an opportunity to make more cash flow as a buyer. Yeah,
like we closed on a 33 unit with a client in Hanover. And, without giving the exact numbers, they'll be posted soon. It was below 120 a unit, beautiful building. And that sort of ratio between price per unit on a 1 or a 2 bed to rental rates is far more attractive when you go to a place like a Port Dover or obviously out by Bruce Power than you would in some of the key markets, right? So obviously we're not talking about appreciation, that's a different factor, but when you look at that metrics alone, it becomes incredibly compelling for a lot of these deals.
Yeah, and that's been one of the reasons that I've always had an eye on these smaller towns, like a little bit of envy of the people who invested there, and almost pulled the trigger on a few of them before I kind of changed my path and focus more on the US. But I just see so much opportunity in these smaller towns because Ontario is so full of people and the immigration isn't slowing down. People are still coming to Ontario. So, whether these people are immigrating to the big cities, Toronto, Montreal, Vancouver, they're in Ontario, they're coming to Toronto mostly, and then realizing, oh, hey, it's too expensive, and they either are pushing other people out of those cities or they're moving outside the cities. And I don't know if Port Dover really works that well as a commuter town, but if you only had to go in once a week, if your employer would allow, I mean, you could even live in Port Dover. So I think that sort of effect of that you can work from home still, it's not fully back in the office at this point, allows some people to even work from these towns, even if they are, large city centered for their employment.
Yeah, and I mean, think about how many. Well, even take this podcast right now, right? Like, I mean, how much has changed, obviously, since COVID, and how much you can get away with not actually being in the office. I mean, we could do our jobs almost entirely away, other than perhaps a building tour. So there's a lot that can be done as you look at metrics like that. To your point,
Mm-hmm.
you get very compelling deals. But what we like about this, what makes it attractive, which we can get into after, is again, I know this has been the last 10 that we've talked about, but is a direct to CMHC deal. So we're really looking at the criteria of the rent that exists today, knowing that if you get it for 2.1, the stabilized dream value we've got is $3.5 million. But right now we are looking at it as taking it the way it is and just sending it to CMHC. And even that is incredibly compelling.
So at current, is it cash flowing, debt covers, all that?
Yeah. So we'll go to the financials, if you don't mind, Brad. Just going back to So just for context, they want 2.25. I put in 2.1 million, pretty confident in that number, 15 unit. So we're at 140,000 a unit. Our underwriting is like a 5.8 cap at purchase. And just for context for the viewers, a lot of what our cap rate is going to be lower than what is published for, the selling agents, of course, because they leave out a lot of the important information. So if you kind of run the data, if you go down a little bit, you'll see that a lot of the important utilities are actually passed back to the tenants. So the hydro and the gas is passed back to the tenants as well. So if we hit the straight to CMHC button, at a 2.1 purchase price.
To clarify on that, Dave, is it separately metered or they're just splitting up the cost and having them pay it back?
Separately metered. Yeah, great question. It's all separately metered. So incredibly.
So for water, electric, and gas, or just electric and gas?
All of it.
All of it. That's pretty awesome. Is this like townhouse style or is this an apartment?
No, it's not. But what's funny? Like, this is just anecdotal, but the Hanover deal I did, the 12 townhomes in Walkerton, I understand those townhomes, they're all metered for everything. But I've never seen that in a Kitchener or in a key market. So I don't know. It's very, very anecdotal, but you start to see these incredibly efficient buildings out tertiary markets.
I like that. Yeah, that's super efficient for the landlord.
Yeah, like if you look at the utility cost, maybe you can highlight that, Brad.
Yes, 2,000.
Gas. I mean, we're $167 a month owing by the landlord on 15 units. Remarkable.
So that would just be like common hallway electric and stuff like that.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, so on this one, I mean, you're showing a 1.3 DCR based on the acquisition price you believe you could get it for. Is that right?
Exactly. Yeah. So just for context too, 85% loan to value. We've used 4.25 as the interest rate. It's always moving, but we're pretty confident that's a fair figure for now. We include all the stuff CMHC needs. Again, property management, vacancy, salary, grass cutting, snow removal, maintenance, labor, you name it, it's in there. And at 85% loan to value, you're cash flowing about almost 30 grand a year on $400,000 investment. So
yeah, so I see you got a little cash on cash there. So not only are you getting the appreciation and the pay down, I mean, hypothetical appreciation, but we know in the long run it is going to happen. You're getting 6.9% cash on cash as well.
Yeah, at a 4.25% interest rate. So, these are the deals. Like, this is why we're selling so much in some of these, these smaller markets, because you look at this and say, again, this is just a context. Like, you're just taking this deal, you're doing nothing to it, and you're sending it to CMHC, right? There's still $1.5 million of value to be unlocked over time in this building.
Well, I was just about to say there's a bunch of upside there with the current rents versus what market rent would be, even to just turn the units over.
Yeah, it's incredible. And that's
you had it in your.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say you had it in your notes as well, where there are some people that are about to leave or are going to be leaving shortly. So without you having to really put in any work, I would assume within the next year, these 4 units are probably ready to be turned over.
Yeah, interesting.
Without even having to put extra work.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, I know there's always a hot topic with tenant turning, but, I don't think this is the style of building with an elderly demographic that you're going to be able to do a boatload of cash for keys.
No, I don't think you're doing cash for keys on this. I mean, some of those rents are atrociously low. So the fact that the deal still works out of the box and cash flows $30K in the year is wild. So, I mean, the upside here, I mean, this is a neat and tidy little deal. And me as an investor going in and buy something like this, like, my biggest questions would be around Port Dover. However, like, at this point, like, I see the housing problem in Ontario, and if you don't need to be in a city, you'll leave for more flexibility and freedom and making your budget stretch further. So,
and one of the ways to mitigate, like, it depends. Like, this is still a strong market. So one of the ways to mitigate some of those concerns would be to bring rents down or to bring vacancy up and pick up an egregious number and put it in there and make sure that you're still with it. But
Right. And what DCR do you need to satisfy for the 85% loan to value? You got to get 1.3?
1.2.
1.2. Okay, so you have buffer here.
Lots of buffer. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, in this one, like, to your point, you're already priced way under market. These people aren't leaving, so it works as is. It seems like there's only upside. I mean, that's of course in case, unless there was a massive exodus from Ontario, which, I mean, at this point we're headed in the more people coming in than leaving. So, by a long shot when we don't have enough housing. So again, going back to the point before, I would just chalk it up to, and I felt this way about Ontario for quite some time, at least like everything south of Sudbury. It's like you're just going to rent no matter where you are because of how many people there are here.
Yeah. And that's why we like running it the way we do. It's like, if you're pressing the upside of the market consistently, you're going to hit some roadblocks, right? It's going to take a little bit of time, but something like this where we're just throwing it over to CMHC and letting it. So I'll tell you, Andrew, one of my goals is to find a deal so good that you actually come back and invest in Ontario.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm working on it.
It might happen.
I know we're getting close. I can tell from the way you're reacting to some of these most deals we're getting there.
I do like it. I mean, the one thing that Ontario has that it's harder to see in the States, like, you can go to a place like Ohio and you have to scrutinize every town. Like, does this town have a future? Because what they'll have cities that have constantly declining populations over like a 50-year span, consistent. Even Cleveland, for instance. Whereas if you look in Ontario, it's like everything's growing and has been for ages because people wanting to come to Ontario. And then, of course, you add immigration to that. And it's just like, how could it go the other way? I mean, and not to say that it couldn't over time. Anything could happen. But it's been such a consistent thing that all these cities grow. And they don't shrink. But you can go across the U.S. and depending on the state you're in, you'll find many cities that shrink and constantly shrink. Or they'll have crime problems with certain cities that just make them uninhabitable or things like that, which you don't get in Ontario. So from an investor standpoint, even international, of course, they're going to look at Ontario and say, hey, at least there's stability there in that sense. And then, of course, you're buying on discount right now if you're American buying into Canada.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah. But it's funny, like, if you go, like, if we take the deal as it is, send it to CMHC, your cushion is if a tenant leaves, like if you go back to financials, you're right? Right. So we send this off to CMHC. We're at a 1.3 debt cover and a 7% cash on cash. And let's say the market collapses and you still have these rental rates. But if you have we're underwriting this, which includes a multitude of units at $700 and $800 a month. And if the market's $1,500 on a one bed and we lop off 25% off of the rent, we're still going to be in a position where we're well over our 1.3 cash flow.
Yeah, you just look at all of them. Every one of those rents is under market except for two, right? I mean,
So there's already this built-in cushion if
huge
the way that
cushion.
it sits right now, we're at a 1.3 debt cover. I mean, even if the market declines substantially on a rental rate basis, we're still going to be able to hit as tenants return. It's still going to be a benefit.
Yeah. No, I like this deal. I've seen a couple good ones. Jake had a good one last week. But you guys don't really ever miss a beat when it comes to bringing deals that make sense.
Finding good quality. It's I mean, look, there's a lot of deals and a lot of them don't make sense. That's always been the case. But we're watching, finding the good ones, combing them out, and then you see stuff like this where it's hard not to make sense of a deal like this. If you have the $400,000 and you have the value of some patience, you're going to be successful in this deal. It'd be very, very hard to not make sense of this deal.
Yeah, that's sweet.
Exactly.
Tell us about the construction type. Like, what are we working with here? Is it a brick building? Approximate age? Mechanicals, all that stuff. Is it all in good shape?
I haven't been in it. I've seen some photos. It's brick construction. It's probably 1970s built. I have been told, I haven't seen any photos, but the mechanicals are in good standing.
Yeah. Like a flat roof building?
Flat roof building. And it's the mechanicals have had upgrades. I don't know when, but which would probably be indicative of seeing on the
well, and their furnace per unit here too, right? Because they all have their own heat source. So central heating. Is there even one, or is it all just heat from the units?
Their units, and they're all owned. So it's powerful. A lot of money's gone into this building, right? To get it to where it is. So.
Awesome. Okay, and if people want to know more about this one, is it best they just go to the list? They can sign up onto the video, or do you have other instructions for them?
Sign up on the list, get on the Insider. This, and we've got a few others similar to it. We have some more coming out, actually. So yeah, sign up for the Insider. We'll get on a call, Brad, me, somebody, and we'll run you through it.
Nice. Yeah, guys. So link is under the video. If you're on YouTube, if you're on one of the podcast platforms, just check the show notes. REI Hot Seat Insiders list. You're going to want to be there because that's where all the exciting stuff happens. And obviously you see these guys bring really good looking deals. When a lot of people still believe there isn't cash flow out there, here you guys are, pretty much every week we've got something that cash flows.
Yeah. Well, we're hitting well over the 1.2 debt cover on 85% LTV. So
yeah,
quality up there.
Excellent. All right, guys, any final thoughts on this one? Put a bow on it. Anything you want to share? Or?
No, reach out. Let's continue the conversation. There's definitely good deals.
Perfect.
More good deals to come.
Yeah, looking forward to it. Can't wait to get back in the studio. We can do this face to face.
Can't wait, buddy. And we're going to sell you one in 2025. I'm going to get you to do a deal.
All right, guys, if you made it this far, show the channel some love, like it, subscribe, and send this video to somebody you think it could help, because why not? And we'd really appreciate it.
Thanks. Appreciate y'all.
Thank you.